I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing a coffee mug I'd forgotten on the counter overnight, when I heard the front door unlock. Not a knock, not a doorbell, a key. The lock clicked, the hinge gave that soft groan it always made in the morning, and a second later, my mother-in-law walked in like she'd been there all her life. She had 3 rolling suitcases behind her, the kind that thump over the threshold and leave little marks on the baseboard if you're not careful. She didn't look at me first. She looked past me, into the house. "Good morning," she said, like we were meeting for brunch. Then, without raising her voice or changing her expression, she added, "I'm moving in." I remember the mug in my hand, warm ceramic, a little too slippery from soap. I set it down carefully, like it mattered, because I could already feel my body trying to go somewhere loud, and I didn't want to follow. I just said, "Excuse me?" She repeated it, still calm. "I'm moving in." Behind her, my husband's office door upstairs was slightly open. I could hear his keyboard, the faint tapping he did when he was trying to get ahead of his day. That sound, normal and steady, didn't match what was happening in my entryway. And there was one other detail that stuck in my mind right then, even though I didn't understand why it would matter yet. A thin manila envelope was tucked under the strap of her smallest suitcase. She didn't seem worried about it falling, like she'd carried it that way on purpose. I watched her roll the suitcases in, one by one, and I didn't stop her. Not because I agreed, just because something in me wanted to see what she thought she could do next. That morning, I stayed quiet. And I let her walk past me. My name is Lena. I was 36 then, living in a 4-bedroom house outside Raleigh, North Carolina. It had a small backyard that backed up to a line of pines, and in the summer, you could hear cicadas like a constant electrical hum. Inside, the house always smelled faintly like cedar from the closet I'd lined with blocks to keep moths away. Nothing fancy, just comfortable, clean, mine. I'd married my husband, June, 3 years earlier. He was a software engineer, smart and funny in a quiet way, the kind of person who could make a sarcastic comment under his breath and then smile like he hadn't. When we were dating, I'd thought he had a healthy relationship with his family. Close, yes, but not intrusive. His mother, Mrs. Hahn, had always been present. She called often, offered opinions freely, and asked questions that felt a little too personal for someone I wasn't close with yet. But at first, it was easy to write off. Some people are like that. Some families are like that. I told myself it was just the adjustment period. During our engagement, the comments started showing up more clearly. At a wedding planning dinner, she leaned forward over her tea and said, in a tone that wasn't rude but wasn't negotiable either, "In our tradition, the bride's family pays." I remember the restaurant was loud, silverware clinking, a server calling out an order from the kitchen. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't laugh. I said, "We're splitting it. June and I are paying for most of it, and both families can contribute equally if they want." Her eyebrows lifted like I'd said something inappropriate in public. "That's not how it's done," she said. I shrugged, still polite. "It's how we're doing it." Under the table, June squeezed my hand, a quick supportive gesture. I believed it meant more than it did. After the wedding, we bought a house, and when I say we, I mean I bought the house. I'd been working in tech sales since my late 20s. I was good at it. I'd saved aggressively and kept my finances simple. June had student loans and a smaller savings cushion. When we were shopping for a home, it made sense for me to qualify a loan. Lower interest rate, cleaner approval, less friction. We talked about it openly. He said he was fine with it, that we were a team. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. So the deed went in my name. The mortgage went in my name. And I didn't think that fact would ever need to be said out loud in my own living room. The house was bigger than we needed, but not ridiculous. A master bedroom, 2 guest rooms, and separate offices since we both worked from home part of the week. I liked the idea of having space without feeling crowded. I liked hearing my own footsteps in the hallway at night. the soft echo that told me there was room to breathe. 6 months after we moved in, Mrs. Hahn started making comments. They came disguised as compliments. "This house is very spacious," she'd say, looking around slowly, eyes lingering on the guest room. "A guest room like this is very comfortable." Or, "In many families, the elders live with their children. It's normal. It's respectful." I would smile and change the subject. I didn't argue. I didn't take the bait. Then one evening, I came home from a client dinner and found her in my kitchen. Not sitting, not waiting, cooking. The stove was on. The smell of garlic and sesame oil filled the space like she'd been there all afternoon. My spice rack had been reorganized. The utensils in the crock by the sink were moved. The drawer where I kept foil and sandwich bags was halfway open, like someone had been searching. She turned when she heard me and smiled, warm and confident. "Hi, Lena," she said. "You must be tired. I made something simple." I stood there with my purse strap still on my shoulder. My heels hurt. My head was buzzing from polite conversation and fluorescent lighting. I said, "How did you get in?" She didn't hesitate. "I have a key, dear." My stomach dropped, not dramatically, just in that slow way where you feel your body trying to catch up with a new reality. "I didn't give you a key," I said. Still smiling, she stirred the pan. "June did. He's a good son." I didn't say anything else in that moment. I walked upstairs, straight to his office. He was in a video meeting with his camera off. I waited in the doorway until he muted himself. Then I asked, "Did you give your mom a key to our house?" He looked at me like I was being a little unreasonable, just slightly, like he wanted to keep things smooth. "She asked for one," he said quietly. "For emergencies." I kept my voice level. "This isn't an emergency. She's rearranging our kitchen." He exhaled, the way he did when he thought I was overreacting. "She's trying to help." "I don't want help," I said. "I want privacy." He rubbed his forehead. "Lena, she's my mother." I stared at him for a second. Then I said, "I want the key back." He didn't answer right away. And that's when I realized something that would come back to me later, in a much louder moment. Silence can be a decision, not a mistake, not confusion, a decision. Eventually, I changed the locks myself. I did it on a weekday. A locksmith came late morning, and I stood in the hallway watching him work. The new keys were cool and heavy in my palm. The deadbolt sounded different when it clicked, a sharper, cleaner sound. When Mrs. Hahn found out, she didn't call me. She called June. Then June's father called me, and he didn't yell, but he lectured. About respect, about family, about what a wife should do to keep peace. I listened. I said very little. I thanked him for sharing his thoughts, because that's what I do when someone is talking at me and I'm deciding how much of my life they're allowed to touch. For a while, things were tense. Then they settled into something that looked calm from the outside. Mrs. Hahn became polite. Distant. The kind of polite that has edges. I thought that meant we'd reached an understanding. I was wrong, because on that Tuesday morning, the one where I was still in soft pants and an old t-shirt, the one where the house was quiet and I was holding a warm mug at the sink, the front door unlocked again. And this time, she didn't come empty-handed. She came with luggage, and a manila envelope, and a certainty that made my skin go cold. She rolled the suitcases in, looked around like she'd been waiting for this moment, and said, "I'll take the master bedroom. It's the largest." Then she started toward the stairs. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch her. I just followed her up, step by step, listening to the wheels bump against each stair edge, and I watched her reach for my bedroom door like she had every right to open it. And that was when I made my first quiet decision of the day. I let her go in first. Then I stood in the doorway, and I watched what she did with my drawers, and I said nothing. Then I waited. She moved fast once she was inside my bedroom. Not frantic, not emotional, just certain. She opened the top dresser drawer like she already knew what was in it. and when she saw my folded shirts, she made a small sound in her throat, almost like disapproval. Then she started lifting things out with one hand and setting them on the floor with the other. At first, I thought she was just making a point. Then she kept going. A sweater I'd worn the week before landed in a soft heap near the bed. A stack of workout leggings slid down the side of the dresser and gathered at the baseboard. She didn't throw anything across the room, but there was still something rough about the way she handled it, like my belongings were temporary by definition. I stayed in the doorway and watched for a few seconds, letting the scene become clear before I reacted to it. "Mrs. Hahn?" I said evenly. "What are you doing?" She didn't turn around. "Making room." "For what?" "For my things." She pulled open another drawer, found a row of neatly rolled socks, and paused, like she was deciding whether they deserved to exist. Then she scooped them into her hand and placed them on top of the growing pile. "You can move your things to the smaller room," she said. "The guest room is fine." "This is my room," I said. Now she turned, and when she looked at me, there was no anger in her face, just a steady confidence that made my stomach tighten. "This is my son's home," she said, "and I am his mother." Then she nodded toward my side of the closet, the part with my dresses and blazers. "You won't need all this space." I didn't answer right away. I looked past her, down the hall. June was there, half in the doorway, half in the hall, like he couldn't decide what role he was supposed to play. His hands were loose at his sides. His face had that uneasy expression he got when something was uncomfortable, and he hoped it would resolve itself without him taking a stand. "Are you going to say something?" I asked him. He glanced at his mother, then back to me. His eyes didn't hold mine for long. "Lena," he said quietly, "let's just talk about it." "Talk about what?" I asked. "Your mom walking into our house with suitcases and claiming my bedroom?" His mother gave a small, polite smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "In our family," she said, "this is normal. The eldest son takes responsibility. The mother lives with him. It is how it is done." I could hear the faint hum of the air vent. Somewhere downstairs, the refrigerator made a soft clicking noise and then went silent again. I forced myself to keep my tone level. "This isn't a discussion we had." She tilted her head, like I'd missed something obvious. "He is your husband. He understands." I looked at him again. "Did you know she was coming today?" He shifted his weight. "She mentioned it." "She didn't mention it," I said. "She arrived." He swallowed, still careful, still trying to keep things smooth. "My mom's been alone since Dad's traveling so much. She's been thinking about next steps." I watched him choose every word like he was trying not to upset anyone, and I realized, with an odd sense of clarity, that he was doing a better job protecting her feelings than mine. I walked into the room, not aggressively, just stepping over the pile of my own clothes. "Mrs. Hahn," I said, "you can't move into my house without my agreement." She didn't flinch. "You are the wife," she said, matter of fact. "You will adjust." Then she added, almost casually, "Wives come and go. Mothers are forever." It was said in the same tone someone might use to talk about weather, like it was a simple truth that didn't need to be softened. June's face tightened slightly, like he knew that line went too far. But he didn't correct her. He didn't say, "That's not okay." He didn't say, "Don't speak to my wife like that." He just stood there, silent, hoping I'd swallow it. I felt heat rise in my chest, and I didn't let it reach my voice. I took a slow breath, then another, and I smiled. Not because I was fine, because I'd learned, over years of negotiating contracts and sitting through meetings where people tried to push boundaries with a friendly tone, that a calm face gives you time. A calm face lets you think. "You're right," I said gently. "I should be more accommodating." Mrs. Hahn's eyes narrowed, not suspicious exactly, just surprised. June's shoulders loosened, like he'd been holding his breath. "Welcome," I added. "Let me help you unpack." For a moment, the room was quiet, like no one knew what to do with that. Then she nodded as if my compliance was the natural outcome. "Good," she said, and turned back to the dresser. I spent the rest of that day moving through my own house like a guest. I carried her clothes upstairs. I cleared a section of the closet. I moved my blazers and dresses into the smaller guest room and hung them on the shorter rod that always felt slightly too low. I lined her toiletries along the bathroom counter while she watched, making small corrections with her hands. "Not there," she'd say, shifting a bottle 2 inches. "Here." At one point, she stood in the kitchen and opened a cabinet. "This is not how you should store rice," she said, and started rearranging again. I kept my expression neutral. I washed dishes. I made dinner. I listened. She talked about routine, about respect, about how a household runs better with one clear authority. She spoke as if she'd been invited to lead a team that had been waiting for her. June tried to be extra pleasant, like he was relieved the conflict had softened into something he could live with. He laughed at things that weren't funny. He offered to carry her bags, even though they were already unpacked. When he looked at me, there was a quiet hope in his eyes, like he wanted credit for peace. That night, I went into the guest room and closed the door. A few minutes later, I heard his footsteps in the hallway, the soft creak of the floorboard near the linen closet. He knocked lightly. "Lena?" I didn't answer. He tried the handle. It didn't move. I'd locked it. "Come on," he said, voice low, careful. "Don't do this." I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands in my lap. For a long time, I just listened to the silence between us. Then I heard him exhale and walk away. The house settled, pipes clicked. The air conditioner turned on and pushed cool air through the vent above the door. I lay back and stared at the ceiling, the faint shadow of the fan blades turning slowly. In my head, I replayed the line again, not like a wound, more like a statement I needed to file correctly. Wives come and go. Mothers are forever. It wasn't just rude. It was a warning. And the fact that my husband had let it land without irtirad, without correction, told me everything I needed to know about what he thought marriage was. Not partnership. More like placement. I got up quietly and opened my laptop on the small desk in the guest room. The screen glowed pale in the dark. I kept the brightness low. I didn't open social media. I didn't search advice. I opened a folder I kept for household documents, the one I used when I compared insurance quotes or checked warranty info, the one I organized the way I organized everything important, clean and boring and reliable, deed, mortgage statement, closing documents, property tax record, my name, printed neatly across each page. I stared at the files for a moment, then clicked through them slowly, not because I had doubts, but because I needed my nervous system to understand what my brain already knew. This was my home, not culturally, not emotionally, legally. I closed the laptop without making a sound, set my phone face down on the desk, and sat still in the dark for a moment longer. Then I reached for a notepad, the plain one I used for work calls, and I wrote one line at the top of a blank page. Options. I didn't write anything under it yet. I just left it there, like a door I was about to walk through. Then I waited. I woke up before my alarm. The house was still dark, the kind of quiet you only get before everyone starts moving around. I could hear a slow drip from the bathroom faucet in the hall, and the soft whir of the fridge downstairs cycling on. I didn't lie there thinking about feelings. I didn't replay arguments. I sat up, reached for my phone, and opened my notes app. Under the word options, I started writing in plain language, like I was outlining a work plan. Not what I wished would happen, what I could do. I walked to the kitchen without turning on the overhead lights. I made coffee with the small under-cabinet light on, just enough to see the counter. I kept my movements quiet, controlled. The mug warmed my hands again, and this time I noticed how steady I was. Back upstairs, I sat at the small desk in the guest room and opened my laptop. The first thing I did was pull up the county property record website and search our address. It loaded slowly, and I waited without impatience. When it came up, there it was in black and white. Owner: Lena Carter. No second name, no joint ownership. Then I opened my mortgage portal and checked the account. My name, my payment history, my autopay. Next, I opened the folder with my closing documents and scrolled down to the page that mattered most, the one with the deed details and the purchase timeline. I didn't need to read every word. I just needed to see the structure, the dates, the signatures. I took screenshots and saved them into a new folder labeled Home. Then I made another folder labeled Household, because I already knew where this was going. I wasn't going to stand in a doorway and argue with someone who believed tradition gave her keys and rights and bedrooms. I wasn't going to do a long, emotional performance for a husband who had watched my clothes hit the floor and called it culture. I was going to treat it like any other situation where someone tried to take something that wasn't theirs, quietly, legally, completely. At 7:45 a.m., I sent an email to a real estate agent I'd met years earlier through a coworker. Her name was Marissa, and she was good at her job in a way I appreciated. Fast, clear, not chatty. Subject line: Need to list my home ASAP. I didn't explain family dynamics. I didn't vent. I wrote 2 sentences. I'm the sole owner on title. I need to list immediately and prefer a quick close. Can you call me this morning? Then I called an attorney. Not a friend. Not someone who dabbles. A local family law attorney with solid reviews and a calm reputation, the kind of office that answers the phone with a real person who knows what they're doing. When the receptionist asked what I needed, I said, divorce consultation. No children. I need to understand timelines and what I should do immediately to protect myself. I didn't say mother-in-law. I didn't say tradition. I didn't say threw my clothes on the floor. I gave the facts that mattered. She scheduled me for a same-day call at noon. At 8:30, I opened my banking app and checked my accounts. I confirmed my paycheck deposit schedule. I verified my emergency fund. I looked at the credit cards, the limits, the balances. Then I opened the shared account June and I used for utilities and groceries. I didn't empty it. I didn't do anything dramatic. I simply turned off my personal contribution to the automatic transfers that fed it. I wasn't cutting him off. I was stopping myself from funding a situation I didn't agree to. Then I made a list of what was mine. Not emotionally mine. Purchased by me mine. Couch, receipt in email. TV, receipt. Dining table, receipt. Appliances, receipt. Beds, invoice. Artwork, confirmation emails. I searched my inbox for brand names and order numbers, pulling up old confirmations and saving them into the household folder. It wasn't obsessive. It was clean preparation. Upstairs, I heard a door open. Mrs. Hahn's voice drifted down the hall, speaking to herself like she owned the air. A cabinet door opened in the bathroom, then another. A few minutes later, June's footsteps. He was up too, moving around with that quiet caution he used when he wanted to pretend nothing had changed. I didn't go out to greet anyone. I stayed at the desk and kept working. At 9:12, my phone buzzed. Marissa. I answered on the first ring and kept my voice normal. Hi, she said. I got your email. Do you want to tell me what's going on? I need to list my house, I said. As soon as possible. I want it priced to move, and I prefer a quick close. There was a pause, professional and measured. Okay, she said. Are there any other owners on title? No. Anyone else on the mortgage? No. Is anyone living with you who might resist showings? I looked at the closed door of the guest room and kept my voice level. Yes, I said. But the house is mine. Marissa didn't react emotionally. That's what I liked about her. Got it, she said. I can come by today to take a look and get photos scheduled. If you want it on the market fast, we'll need to move quickly. That's the plan. Can you do a showing as early as this afternoon if we push it? Yes. Okay, she said. I'll be there at 11. I'll bring the paperwork. When I hung up, I didn't feel relief. I felt order. I opened a fresh page in my notes and wrote 3 lines, simple and clean. Step 1. Confirm legal ownership and documents. Step 2. List the property and secure housing for myself. Step 3. Begin the legal process. Then I closed the laptop and sat still for a moment, listening. Downstairs, I heard the clink of a spoon against a bowl, someone humming softly, the normal sounds of a morning that was pretending to be ordinary. I stood up, smoothed my shirt, and opened the guest room door. In the hallway, June was walking toward the kitchen with sleepy eyes and a cautious expression, like he was trying to gauge my mood before he spoke. He glanced at me, hopeful. "Morning," he said, soft. I gave him a small, polite smile. "Morning," I said back. Then I walked past him, calm and quiet, and went downstairs to make breakfast like everything was fine. Because at 11, the real estate agent was going to ring my doorbell, and no one in that house knew it yet. At 10:58, the doorbell rang. It wasn't loud, just the usual chime, but it cut cleanly through the house like a line drawn on paper. Mrs. Hahn appeared at the top of the stairs in a robe, hair pinned back, watching with the same alert stillness she used when she wanted to understand who was entering her space. June came out of his office a few steps behind her, blinking like he hadn't expected anyone. I walked to the door and opened it. Marissa stood on the porch with a leather folder tucked under her arm and a measuring tape clipped to her bag. She looked past me into the entryway, then back to my face, and gave the smallest professional smile. "Hi, Lena," she said. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. June's eyebrows lifted. "Who's this?" Marissa held out her hand before I answered. "Marissa Landry. I'm a real estate agent." The pause that followed was quiet, but it had weight. June looked at me. "Why is a realtor here?" I didn't match his tone. I didn't rush. I just answered like it was a normal thing adults handle. "I'm listing the house," I said. Mrs. Hahn's expression changed slowly, like a curtain being pulled. "Listing?" she repeated. "Why would you list this house?" Marissa opened her folder and glanced down at a form, giving everyone the gift of businesslike momentum. "If we can walk through, I'll take a few notes. Then we can talk pricing and timeline." June took a step toward me. "Lena, we didn't talk about this." "I'm talking about it now," I said. I kept my voice low and steady. I didn't look at Mrs. Hahn. I looked at him. "I'm the sole owner," I added. "So yes, I can list it." Mrs. Hahn moved down 2 steps, her posture stiff. "This is my son's home." I nodded once, as if I'd heard her. "It's the home he lives in," I said. "But legally, it's mine." Marissa didn't react. She didn't offer opinions. She just waited. I led her through the house. She asked simple questions: square footage, recent updates, age of the roof, condition of the windows. She took photos with her phone as references and made quick notes in her folder. Behind us, Mrs. Hahn followed like a shadow, arms folded tight, scanning every room as if she could will the paperwork to change. June trailed behind her, quiet and tense, his eyes darting between me and his mother like he was trying to calculate which reaction was safer. In the kitchen, Marissa paused by the back door. "You're okay with showing starting today?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She looked at me carefully, like she was checking if I understood what I was saying. "That means strangers walking through. It can feel invasive." I kept my tone even. "I understand." She nodded and turned a page in her folder. "If we list today, we can schedule an open window this afternoon, and individual showings after. If it's priced right, we could see offers quickly." "That's what I want," I said. Mrs. Hahn stepped forward, voice tighter now. "No, this is not happening." I looked at her calmly. "It is happening." She opened her mouth to argue again, But Marissa spoke first, still polite. "Mrs. Hahn," she said, "I work for the homeowner." The words weren't harsh. They were simply true. Mrs. Hahn stared at me, then back at Marissa, like she'd expected the world to bend toward her. When Marissa finished the walkthrough, we stood near the entryway. She laid the listing documents on the small table by the stairs and slid a pen toward me. "We can do electronic signatures too," she said, "but if you want this live today, signing now is fastest." I picked up the pen and signed where she pointed. Page after page, neat and consistent. I didn't hesitate. June finally found his voice. "Lena, what are you doing?" I capped the pen and set it down. "I'm taking control of my situation." Mrs. Hahn's face tightened with anger that didn't quite break the surface. "You are making a mistake," she said. I kept my expression neutral. "I'm making a decision." Marissa gathered the papers and tucked them back into her folder. "I'll get this into the system," she said. "You'll see it go live in a few hours." When she left, the house felt bigger, emptier. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Hahn's voice rose, not into shouting, but into the sharp, scolding tone she used when she believed authority was hers. "You cannot sell," she said. "You are the wife. This is family." June turned to me, face pale. "You can't just do this without talking to me." I looked at him. "We did talk," I said. "For months. When I asked for privacy. When I asked you not to give her a key. When I asked you to stop calling boundary violations tradition." He opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. I didn't stand there waiting for him to grow up in real time. I went back upstairs, into the guest room, and closed the door. I opened my laptop again and checked my calendar. Noon, attorney call. At 12:00 on the dot, my phone rang. I answered quietly. "This is Lena." The attorney's voice was calm, clear. "Hi, Lena. I'm Dana Patel. I understand you're looking at a divorce process, no children, and you want to protect yourself." "Yes," I said. "Okay," she replied. "Let's keep this simple. Tell me what assets exist, what's in your name, what's joint, and what immediate risks you're worried about." I spoke in facts. House, in my name only. Mortgage, in my name only. Most household purchases, mine. No kids, no shared investments worth fighting over. One joint checking account used for utilities. Then I said, "There are other adults in the home right now who may refuse to leave." Dana didn't sound surprised. "Understood," she said. "And you've already listed the house?" "Yes." "Good," she said, like it was a reasonable step, not a dramatic one. "If you're sole title, you can sell. You should keep documentation that it's separate property, and we'll be careful about timing and communication. Also, I want you to avoid arguments inside the home. Keep it procedural." "I can do that," I said. "Next," she continued, "you need a plan for where you'll live, and you need to secure your essential items. Documents, IDs, financial records, anything you can't replace quickly." I looked at the folder on my desk where I'd already placed my passport, my birth certificate, and my closing documents that morning. "Already started," I said. "Good," she replied. "After this call, I'll send an engagement agreement. Once you sign and pay the retainer, I can draft filing paperwork. We can move quickly." I thanked her, ended the call, and sat still for a moment. Downstairs, I could hear Mrs. Hahn speaking in short bursts, the way she did when she was complaining to someone who wasn't pushing back. June's voice was lower, strained, trying to calm her. I opened my email. Marissa had already sent a confirmation. Subject line: listing active. I stared at it for a second, then clicked it open. The address was there, the photos pending, the showing schedule already forming like a machine starting up. I set my phone face down again. Then I waited. By late afternoon, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not because Mrs. Hahn was upstairs unpacking into my drawers, but because strangers were walking through my hallway with quiet shoes and polite voices, pausing in doorways to look at the crown molding and the size of the closets. I stayed out of the way during the first showing. I sat in my car at the end of the street with my laptop on my knees, answering emails like it was any other Tuesday. When my phone buzzed, it was Marissa. "First couple liked it," she said. "They're serious. I have another showing in 40 minutes. "Okay," I said. "You're doing fine," she added, and I could tell she meant the calmness in my voice, not the sale. "I'm fine," I said, and I was. Back inside, Mrs. Hahn watched from the landing as the second group walked up the stairs. Her face was stiff, eyes following them as if she could block them with disapproval alone. After they left, she came down and stood in the kitchen, arms folded. "You are inviting strangers into family space," she said. I rinsed a plate slowly, not because the plate mattered, but because I wanted my hands to keep doing something normal. "They're not strangers," I said. "They're buyers." She made a short, sharp sound. "You cannot sell. My son lives here." I turned off the faucet and dried my hands. "Yes, he lives here," I said. "That doesn't make it his property." June hovered in the doorway, pretending to check his phone. He was listening to everything, but he still wasn't choosing a side. He was just hoping the situation would soften on its own. It didn't. At 7:18 p.m., Marissa called again. "Offer came in," she said. "Strong one, cash. They want a 30-day close." I leaned back against the counter and looked at the floor, not in shock, just letting the number settle into place. "What's the price?" I asked. She told me. It was fair, clean, the kind of offer that didn't invite drama or prolonged negotiation, the kind that ends a chapter quickly. "I want to accept," I said. "Okay," she replied. "I'll send it for signature tonight." After we hung up, I stood still for a moment. The house was quiet in a way that felt staged. Mrs. Hahn was upstairs. June was in his office. No one was speaking to me unless they had to. I walked back to the guest room and opened my laptop. The offer documents came through in my email within minutes. I read them carefully, line by line, like I was reviewing a contract at work. 30-day close, earnest money, inspection waived, no contingencies that would drag this out. I signed electronically. Then I saved the final, executed copy to the home folder. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a clean sense of completion. Next, I opened a tab and searched for short-term rentals. Something simple. Quiet. 1 bedroom. I filtered for places with secure entry and no shared hallway. By 8:30, I had a deposit down on a 1-bedroom apartment across town. A place with a balcony, a view of trees, and a lock that only I controlled. Then I did one more thing before I left the desk. I printed 2 copies of the signed purchase agreement. One for my records, one for the conversation I knew I was going to have. Downstairs, I could smell dinner. Mrs. Hahn had cooked again, filling the house with warmth like she believed it created ownership. I came into the dining room when they were already sitting, Mrs. Hahn at the head of the table, June beside her, his posture tight. I didn't comment on where they sat. I didn't correct it. I didn't need to. I placed the printed agreement on the table, aligned with the edge, and slid it toward June. "What's that?" he asked. "It's the purchase agreement," I said. "I accepted an offer." His eyes moved across the pages slowly, as if he expected the words to rearrange themselves into something less real. Mrs. Hahn leaned forward. "Offer?" she said. "You sold?" "The house is under contract," I said. June looked up at me, face pale. "Lena, you can't be serious." "I'm serious," I said. "It closes in 30 days. Mrs. Hahn's mouth tightened. "This is my son's home." I nodded once. "He can live somewhere else." June's voice rose slightly, not shouting, but edged. "Where am I supposed to go?" I kept my tone even. "You can find an apartment," I said. "Or you can move in with your parents. Or you can do whatever you think is right." Mrs. Hahn's eyes widened. "You are breaking the family." I didn't argue with the emotion in that statement. I didn't debate tradition. I just stated the reality. I'm leaving this marriage, I said. I'm not staying in a home where I'm treated like a guest. June stared at me like he was waiting for the old version of me to soften. Lena, he said, quieter now. We can talk about this. My mom can go back home. We can fix it. I looked at him and spoke slowly, the way you speak when you want every word to land cleanly. Your mother moved into my bedroom, I said. She said wives come and go. You stood there and let her say it. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Mrs. Hahn's voice sharpened. You are disrespectful. I didn't react to the label. You didn't ask, I said. You arrived with suitcases and claimed my room. That's not respect either. June pushed the agreement away slightly, like it burned his fingers. What about the furniture? He asked. I answered plainly. Most of it is mine. I'm taking what I bought. Mrs. Hahn's face changed, the first crack of panic showing through the anger. You can't take everything. I'm not taking everything, I said. I'm taking what belongs to me. June's voice went thin. You're doing this to punish me. No, I said. I'm doing this because I finally understand the rules in this house. I let a small pause sit there. The rule is that your mother's comfort comes first, I continued, and my comfort is optional. Mrs. Hahn stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. This is not how a wife behaves, she said. I stayed seated. Then I won't be your version of a wife, I said. June's hands were shaking slightly now. Where are you going? I have an apartment, I said. It's mine. 1 bedroom. Quiet. Mrs. Hahn's voice wavered into something sharper and more frightened. And my son? I looked at her, calm. You said mothers are forever, I said. So be forever. Take care of him the way you expect him to take care of you. June's face tightened like he'd been hit, but I didn't change my tone. This isn't a debate, I said. The contract is signed, the close date is set, the showings will continue if needed, and I'll be moving my things out. For a moment, all I could hear was Mrs. Hahn's breathing and the faint buzz of the overhead light. June finally spoke, low and pleading. Lena, please, don't do this. I looked at him for a long second. Then I stood up and collected my copy of the agreement from my side of the table. I'm going upstairs, I said. I suggest you start thinking practically. I walked away before anyone could turn it into a shouting match. Back in the guest room, I closed the door and sat at the desk again. I opened my calendar and added 1 new entry. Move out. Then I made 1 phone call to a moving company and scheduled the earliest slot they had available. Tomorrow morning. After I confirmed the time, I set my phone face down, turned off the light, and lay on the bed fully dressed. I listened to the house settle around me. Then I waited. The moving truck pulled up at 8:05 a.m. I'd chosen a company that did corporate relocations, not a couple of guys in a rented van. I wanted professionalism. I wanted receipts. I wanted everything documented without me needing to explain why. When the first mover rang the doorbell, he had a clipboard in his hand and steel-toed boots that didn't scuff the porch. He introduced himself, asked where to park, and waited for my direction. I stepped aside and let them in. The noise woke the whole house immediately. Mrs. Hahn came out of the master bedroom in a robe, hair half-pinned, her face tight with anger that hadn't fully turned into panic yet. What is this? She demanded, looking past me into the living room where the movers were laying down protective runners. It's moving day, I said. She stared at me like I was speaking a different language. Moving, she repeated. Who is moving? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't change my expression. I am, I said, and I'm taking my things. Her eyes snapped to the movers, then back to me. No, you cannot. I didn't argue. I just nodded once, as if I understood she disliked the answer. I can, I said. It's my house and my property. June came down the stairs fast, still in sweatpants, face pale and tired. His eyes went from the movers to his mother to me. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I told you last night," I said. "I'm moving out." He ran a hand through his hair like he could reset the situation by touching his head. "Lena, come on." I didn't respond to the tone. I responded to the facts. "The house closes in 30 days, I said. "I'm not living here until then." Mrs. Hahn's voice sharpened. "This is theft." I looked at her steadily. "It isn't," I said. "I have receipts, and the movers are only taking what I tell them to take." The lead mover cleared his throat politely. "Ma'am," he said to me, "do you want us to start with the living room?" "Yes," I said. He nodded and signaled his team. They moved in clean steps, lifting the couch with practiced coordination. One of them wrapped the television in padded material. Another started disassembling the dining table carefully, placing screws into a labeled bag. Mrs. Hahn stood in the middle of the room like she couldn't understand that the world was allowed to keep moving without her permission. "No," she said again, louder this time. "Stop, stop." The movers didn't look at her. They looked at me. I kept my voice calm. "Continue," I said. June stepped toward the couch as it was being carried away. "Wait," he said. "That's our couch." I corrected him without emotion. "It's my couch," I said. "I bought it." He stared at me. "You're taking everything?" "I'm taking what belongs to me," I said again. He looked around the room as the space emptied. The framed photos came off the walls. The bookshelf was boxed. The rug rolled and wrapped. "What am I supposed to sit on?" he asked. And it was such a small question that it almost made me sad. But I didn't soften into confusion. I stayed in clarity. "You can buy a couch," I said. "Or you can keep the things you bought. I'm not stopping you." Mrs. Hahn's face was turning red, the anger finally spilling into distress. "This is my son's home," she said, and her voice broke slightly on the last word. June looked at me like he was still hoping I'd change my mind if he looked hurt enough. I didn't. I walked through the house with the lead mover and pointed out what was coming with me. Living room, mine. Dining set, mine. Kitchen appliances I'd purchased, mine. The guest room furniture, mine. My office desk, chair, filing cabinet, mine. I left June's work setup untouched. His desk, his monitors, his chair. I left the things he could clearly claim without debate. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clean separation. Upstairs, Mrs. Hahn tried to stand in the doorway of the master bedroom, blocking the movers from entering. "This is my room," she said, planted like a statue. I stopped a few feet away and spoke quietly, so it didn't turn into a show. "You moved into this room yesterday," I said. "You don't own it." She glared at me, then looked at June like he would fix it. He didn't. He stood behind her with his hands loose at his sides, trapped in the same silence he'd chosen the day before. I didn't push past her. I didn't touch her. I just turned to the lead mover. "Skip this room," I said. "We'll take the guest room and the items already listed. My personal belongings are already packed." That was true. My important documents were in my bag. My clothes were boxed. My laptop and work items were ready. I didn't need the master bedroom to leave. Mrs. Hahn's eyes narrowed. "You are leaving your things," she said, triumphant for a second, like she'd found a loophole. I nodded. "I'm leaving what I don't need," I said. By noon, the house looked like a staged listing. Bare walls, empty corners, echoes. What remained was June's office, Mrs. Hahn's suitcases, and whatever they could claim as theirs without me needing to argue. In the living room, Mrs. Hahn sat on the floor because there was nothing else left to sit on. She was crying now, loud enough that it filled the empty space. June stood near the kitchen island, staring at the blank living room as if he couldn't process that this was real. "This is extreme," he said finally. I picked up my car keys from the counter. "It's final," I said. He swallowed. "You're really divorcing me?" I reached into my bag and took out a thin packet of papers in a plain folder. No dramatic reveal, just paperwork. Yes, I said. Dana is filing. His eyes flicked down to the folder. You already have papers? I told you, I said. I moved to practical. Mrs. Hahn's crying turned into wailing, a raw sound that made the movers exchange quick glances before looking away. This is all my fault, she said through tears. I ruined everything. June turned to her, frustrated and helpless. Mom, stop. Then he turned back to me, voice low. Lena, please, just give it a week. Let's talk without all this. I shook my head once. You had time, I said. You had the exact moment where you could have said, no, Mom, not like this. You didn't. He looked down. I didn't know it would go that far. But it did, I said. And when it did, you still did nothing. The lead mover approached me with the final paperwork. Ma'am, he said, we're finished. Can you sign here? I signed. I paid. I thanked them. Then I walked to the front door and stood there for a moment, hand on the knob. I looked back into the empty house. Not at the walls, not at the space, at the people still standing in it. June looked exhausted, like someone who'd been hoping life would remain easy if he stayed passive. Mrs. Hahn looked small for the first time, sitting on the floor, surrounded by nothing but her own certainty collapsing. I spoke with the same calm tone I'd used all week. You have 30 days, I said. After that, the buyers take possession. Mrs. Hahn looked up sharply. We have nowhere to go. I nodded, not unkindly. Then you should start looking today, I said. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. In my car, I sat still for a moment before starting the engine. The air smelled like cold morning and fresh cardboard. My phone buzzed with a new email from Marissa. Subject, second offer as backup. I didn't open it right away. I drove to my new apartment first. When I arrived, the leasing office handed me the keys and a small welcome packet. The keys felt heavier than they should have, not because of metal, but because of what they represented. One lock, one door, one space that no one else could claim. Inside, the apartment was quiet. The air had that clean, empty smell of fresh paint and no memories yet. Sunlight fell across the living room floor in wide rectangles. I set my bag down, walked to the balcony, and looked at the trees in the distance. Then I went back inside and did one small thing that made the whole day feel real. I took a roll of paper towels from my bag, wiped down the kitchen counter, and lined up my mug, my coffee, and my keys in a neat row. Order. I put the phone face down. Then I waited. The first night in the apartment was quiet, in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. Not the quiet of people giving each other the cold shoulder, not the quiet of tension sitting in the corners, just quiet. I unpacked only what I needed. A few hangers in the closet, my laptop on the small desk by the window, toiletries in the bathroom drawer. I didn't decorate. I didn't rush to make it feel like a home. I just let it be a safe place to land. I made tea in a mug I'd owned for years, the one with the slightly chipped handle. I stood by the kitchen counter while the kettle cooled, listening to the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the faint traffic outside. No footsteps above me, no door opening without warning, no voice telling me what a wife should be. When I got into bed, I didn't scroll. I didn't replay conversations. I turned off the light and let my mind settle like a glass of water left alone long enough to clear. The next morning, I woke up and made a short list. Change address, move accounts, separate finances, meet with Dana. That was it. Clean steps. Nothing theatrical, no speeches. Dana filed within the week. The paperwork was plain and efficient, the way real consequences usually are. June received the documents at work, because that's what the process requires when you want it done correctly and without debate. He called me that evening. I watched his name come up on the screen and let it ring for a few seconds before answering. Not as a punishment, just to give myself a breath. Lena, he said, voice tight. You really did it. Yes, I replied. I can fix this, he said. I told my mom she can't live with me. I told her we need boundaries. I told her. I didn't interrupt. I let him finish, because people deserve to say what they need to say when the outcome is already decided. When he paused, I spoke quietly. You're talking about what you'll do now, I said. But the moment that mattered already happened. He exhaled like he wanted to argue, then stopped. I didn't know she'd treat you like that, he said. I kept my voice even. You heard her? I said. You watched her move my clothes out. You watched her claim my room. You listened when she said I was just the wife, and you still tried to make it my job to adjust. Silence on the line. Then, softer. I was trying to keep peace. I know, I said, but you were keeping peace with the person who was creating the problem. He didn't have an answer for that. We talked for a few more minutes, mostly him circling the same point, me staying with the same reality. When we hung up, I didn't feel angry. I felt finished. The divorce itself was straightforward. No children, no shared property worth unraveling. The house had already gone under contract in my name, with documentation showing it was purchased with my own funds before marriage. June asked, through a message, if he was entitled to anything from the sale since we were married when it closed. Dana's response was short and factual. No. That question ended there. The sale closed on schedule. I didn't attend in person. I signed electronically from my apartment, then went for a walk around the neighborhood while the final confirmations came through. When I got the email that the funds had landed, I didn't celebrate. I just opened my budgeting spreadsheet, moved numbers where they needed to go, and kept my life steady. A month later, I heard through a mutual friend that June and his mother had rented a small 2-bedroom place. Not far, but far enough that I didn't have to worry about running into them. The friend didn't sound excited when she told me, just tired. It's tense, she said. They're not speaking much. I believed that. It's one thing to talk about tradition when you're holding power over someone else. It's another thing to live inside the tradition when the space is small, the money is tight, and there's no one left to absorb the pressure. A few weeks after that, June's father called me. He didn't start with demands or lectures this time. His voice sounded older than I remembered. Lena, he said, I owe you an apology. I stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the trees, and listened. We didn't understand, he said. We thought we were protecting family, but we were wrong. What my wife did was unacceptable, and my son should have protected you. I took a slow breath. Thank you, I said. I appreciate you saying that. It doesn't change anything, he added quickly, like he knew. No, I said. It doesn't. He asked gently, Is there any way you could forgive her? I didn't answer with anger. I answered with honesty. I don't hate her, I said, but I'm not going back into a system where I'm expected to shrink. He was quiet for a moment. I understand, he said, and for the first time, I believed him. After that, life got quieter in the best way. I started cooking the way I liked again. My own pantry, my own shelves, nothing rearranged. I took my laptop to the balcony in the mornings and worked with the door cracked open so I could hear birds instead of tension. I traveled once, a short trip I'd put off for years because there was always some family expectation looming. I went alone, and it felt simple and clean. I slept well. I ate slowly. I came home to a door that only opened when I decided it should. About a year later, I bought another house. Not because I wanted to prove anything, because I wanted a long-term place that belonged to me, fully, without negotiation. I did it carefully. I chose a neighborhood I liked. I read every line of the paperwork myself, even though I could have delegated it. I signed with a steady hand. The first thing I did when I moved in was replace the locks. Then I labeled one key for my best friend, the kind of person who would only use it if I asked. That difference mattered. Here's what I took from all of it, and it isn't dramatic. If someone tells you that disrespect is tradition, don't argue with the tradition. Pay attention to the disrespect. If your partner won't protect your boundaries when it's uncomfortable, they won't protect you when it matters. And if you have leverage, don't turn it into a weapon. Turn it into a plan. Paperwork. Timelines. Clear steps. That's how you get your life back. The strangest part is, once I left, other people started telling me their stories. A coworker pulled me aside one afternoon and said her husband's family had been staying for a few weeks, for almost a year, and she didn't know how to make it stop without becoming the villain. Another woman I met at a cafe told me her mother-in-law had her own key too, and she kept pretending it was normal because she didn't want to fight. I listened. I didn't judge. I just told them what I'd learned. You're not wrong for wanting a door that stays closed. You're not selfish for protecting your home, and you're not required to stay where you're treated like a guest. If you've been through something like this, I'm glad you're here with me. And if you haven't, I hope you never have to learn these lessons the hard way. If you want more calm, real stories like this, please like and subscribe. It helps this little community grow. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I always read those. 2 popular stories will appear next, and I'll see you there.